All right, today we're going to dive into one of the most famous and maybe one of the most misunderstood speeches in all of history, the Sermon on the Mount. Now, you probably think you know it, but what if I told you there's a revolutionary and deeply controversial challenge hiding in plain sight?
Yeah, we've all heard lines like this, right? They're beautiful, they're poetic, they feel kind of like a warm blanket of spiritual wisdom. For a lot of people, this is what the Sermon on the Mount is, just a collection of these gentle, comforting ideals. It's familiar, it's peaceful. But what if that's not the whole picture? What if seeing these words as just nice, simple platitudes means we're missing the entire point? The real question we have to ask is, are these just gentle suggestions? Or are they something way more demanding, something radical? So let's start right there, with that common view. Is this really just a sermon about peace and poetry? You see, if you treat the Sermon on the Mount like it's just a book of good advice, all the controversy just melts away. It becomes this kind of spiritual buffet, you know? You can take a little turn the other cheek here, maybe some love your enemies there, and just leave the stuff that feels too hard. It's inspirational, sure, but it's not actually binding. But here's the thing, that pick and choose approach completely misses the explosive power of this text. So now let's get right to the heart of it, the controversial core. And here it is. This is the absolute key. The controversy isn't really about the individual phrases like turn the other cheek. The real controversy ignites the second we read these not as suggestions, but as true, binding, authoritative commands from a king. And listen, this isn't some modern hot take. The original audience was completely floored for this exact reason. They were used to teachers who would quote other famous teachers. But Jesus, he spoke as if the authority was his and his alone. He wasn't giving an opinion, he was giving a verdict. This is a perfect way to think about it in our world. A TED Talk, right? It's awesome. It gives you inspiring ideas, things to consider. But the Sermon on the Mount, it issues kingdom commands that demand your alignment and your obedience. One is a suggestion you can take or leave. The other is a summons, and that is a world of difference. So what happens when these kingdom commands smash right into the way we live our lives today? Let's look at how the sermon directly confronts modern life. I mean, our culture practically worships assertiveness, right? Self-promotion, building your brand. Pride is often treated like a virtue. But the sermon kicks off by blessing the meek, the humble, the exact opposite of what we're told you need to do to get ahead. And oh, it gets so much more radical. We value strength, standing up for ourselves, getting justice through retaliation, but Jesus commands something totally different. Turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, and, this is the real shocker, love your enemies. To a lot of people, that sounds like absolute weakness. And finally, let's look at our wallets. Our entire world is basically built on consumerism, ambition, and measuring success by how much stuff you have. And Jesus just draws this hard, uncrossable line in the sand. You cannot serve God and money. He tells his followers to seek a totally different kind of treasure. So how did Jesus introduce these earth-shattering ideas? Well, he used this powerful, repeated formula. You have heard that it was said, but I say to you. Get this. 6 times in a single chapter, he takes a familiar law, a comfortable tradition that everybody knew, you have heard it said, and then he doesn't just explain it. He cranks up the intensity, he goes deeper, and he exposes the real heart behind it. And you can see this pattern so clearly. It's not enough to just not murder someone. Jesus says the anger in your heart is the real problem. It's not enough to not commit adultery. He says that lust is the very same sin in your heart. He just systematically shifts the standard from what you do on the outside to who you are on the inside. There's nowhere to hide. So you can see why this little phrase is so explosive. When he says, but I say to you, Jesus is claiming ultimate, divine authority over tradition itself. He's making it crystal clear that just looking good on the outside isn't enough. God is after a totally transformed heart. And that just leaves no wiggle room for compromise or for picking and choosing. Now, all of this can lead to a pretty overwhelming feeling, right? The standard just seems impossibly high. And that brings us to our final section, the impossible mirror. And here it is, the climax of it all. Be perfect. Not try really hard or do your best. Be perfect. I mean, wow. It feels like this crushing weight. an impossible command that's just designed to make us all fail. But what if? What if that's the whole point? This is where we see a radical shift in how to view this. The sermon isn't a moral ladder we're supposed to climb to prove we're good enough. It's a perfect mirror. It's designed to show us that we can't do it on our own. It's meant to reflect our deep spiritual poverty and our desperate need for help, for grace. And this is absolutely critical. Grace isn't some cosmic hall pass to just ignore the commands. The point isn't to lower the standard. Instead, grace is presented as the divine power that actually enables a person to start living this way, a life that's transformed from the inside out. Let that one sink in for a minute. The Sermon on the Mount isn't a list of requirements you follow to get saved. It's the description of what a life looks like that has been saved and is now being transformed. It's the fruit, not the root. It's the evidence, not the requirement. And so, this whole thing leaves us with one final provocative question. Every single day, we're surrounded by that voice of, "You have heard." It's the voice of culture, of tradition, of convenience, but there's another voice speaking, one that claims ultimate authority. So the real question is, which one are you building your life on?